at that right there. Look at that head shake, man. Oh, man, that's what we came up here for.
Okay, live in 3, 2, 1.
All right, good morning, Jeff.
Hey, Jer.
We are shooting this morning in the studio because you have to be somewhere this afternoon because you are going to acquire something that every man dreams about having.
Every man.
Yeah.
Yeah. And my wife's really pushing for it.
Oh, I bet she is, yeah.
To save the relationship.
So the big surprise there is Jeff is getting a pole barn. Pretty exciting news there.
Yeah?
Yeah. Pretty cool.
It'll be able to store boats and tackle, and it's just a giant tackle box.
Yeah. Well, besides being a pole barn enthusiast, Jeff and I are co-workers here. And Jeff, why don't you just give us a little bit of background before we dive into this week's topic about prairie fishing?
Prairie fishing.
Yeah.
Well, my background would be that I was raised in one of the prairie states, which is South Dakota, and that's where I grew up. And so I grew up fishing the eastern side of the state, which is absolutely full of prairie lakes, which would be the prairie pothole region, which when you blow that up, that's a whole nother topic, right? But those prairie lakes absolutely full of fish. And then the Missouri River system, back in the 80s when I was a kid and growing up through college, just a walleye factory and still is today. And you talk about a massive, it's a river system, but it's a reservoir system. Lake Oahe, Lake Sakakawea, Sharp, Francis Case on down, that's a whole nother world. So that's kind of where I cut my teeth on, catching walleyes is the big thing over there, obviously, but there's all kinds of fish to be had. It's amazing. So
Yeah, prairie fishing is just such a huge topic. We were chatting about this yesterday. When you consider the prairies stretching from western Minnesota through the Dakotas, eastern Montana, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta, I mean, the land mass that it occupies in North America is huge. But I think for a lot of anglers, when they do think of prairie fishing, they are thinking of western Minnesota through that pothole region in the Dakotas, and then, of course, the Missouri River, and there's other systems and river systems in North Dakota. But let's kind of dive into that pothole style fishing. And I know a lot of anglers like to head out there in the springtime. For us here in Minnesota, we can't fish for walleyes or bass or pike or whatever in early May. So when the ice goes out there, a lot of anglers just love to go out there for those opportunities. And there's a lot of water out there. If you haven't seen this area, look on the map. It's quite amazing. So how do you
first
pick
look on the map at a topo map, whether it be Onyx Fish or pull up Google Earth, whatever you want to do, get a perspective on that. Forget the state boundaries. Like, just erase that from your memory and take a look at that region. A lot of people are like, oh, yeah, I've heard of South Dakota raises pheasants, and North Dakota is good hunting, and it is amazing when you take the western side of Minnesota, South Dakota, North Dakota on up, how many lakes. It quickly becomes overwhelming as to how many bodies of water there are, and the bottom line is these lakes are full of fish. And that's especially true with the high water that has just continued. It started in the 80s, where these bodies, they were once duck sloughs that my grandpa hunted, are now duck sloughs that my grandpa went out in waders in, are now 25 foot deep. That's the bottom line, right? And that's from Wabae to Lake Thompson, all the way up to Devil's Lake. Like, Devil's Lake is an unbelievable complex system that was once a duck slough, So these waters, and it's, you got to look at the map and look at these waters, and you'll quickly be overwhelmed. That's one thing. Now, just go fishing. That's always been my advice on how you tackle these prairie lakes. Like, just go fishing. And that sounds oversimplified, but these lakes are, for the most part, comparatively to like what we have in Minnesota, where they're structured. You can look at your Lake Master Lake map, 1 foot contours, and you're like, oh, there's a point, there's a bump. Let's go check out these spots that, based on the time of year where these fish should be. You look at these lakes, they are dishpan bowl shaped for the most part. That said, there's still structure available in these bodies of water, whether it's weeds, the shoreline's a piece of structure, how the water temperature, in the spring of the year, which we'll talk about, is something to really key on. Moving water, in the spring, if you have runoff, moving water, all these different variables you can focus in on and start looking for fish. So
That's pretty cool. That's good advice, and simplifying it to just go fishing does make sense. If you are in Minnesota, a great tool to find some of this stuff is Onyx Fish. They've got a Lake Finder app, so you could search different criteria to find if you're looking for walleyes or crappies or whatever it is. But going back to the Dakotas, I've spent a fair amount of time out there, mostly in the spring, and that's one of the things to me that's been somewhat of a challenge is when you do just go fish, coming from Minnesota or fishing a lot in Ontario when you're used to fishing points and having, round rock piles and all these, weed features or wood, and you go out there and there's just a lot of sand and mud, and it's like you can go forever, and it does take some confidence to just realize that you just gotta make a lot of casts, and it seems like the fish are always moving. That's been my experience out there.
Yeah, no, and the confidence thing, you bring up a great point. You really have to tell yourself that there are fish here. And I worked for years for In Fisherman magazine, and with that was a professional tournament trail. And you'd see that with these are really good fishermen, and they get out there and you're like, where do you start? It seems like, and Devil's Lake was a good one when you had all those big cottonwood trees still standing. It was like, man, every tree could hold a fish. How do you fish this, right? Mm-hmm. You just basically have to go find them and start fishing. And the cool thing is, like you mentioned it earlier, Jer, that in the spring of the year, like I'm half removed now. My life I've spent half my time here in Minnesota now, even though I got blood that bleeds the prairie, right? But they don't close their season. They've never closed their season for walleyes. Like we have a closed season here for most fish, and the season's just open over there. So I remember when I was growing up, like we didn't start fishing until the fish started biting, It was just like kind of out your back door, basically super spoiled. And this is the same with pheasant hunting and duck hunting. If you grow up there, and it's beautiful, diamond in the rough type area. But the fish, as soon as the lakes open up, you have access to start fishing. It's great.
Yeah, it is really great. And one thing for anybody who's fished in the Dakotas knows that wind is always a factor. Some of the things that I've experienced out there is looking for points, even as subtle as they might be, can obviously hold fish as they're, like you say, traveling in these more dishpan spots. But also that wind creates a lot of mud lines, and that difference in water color. At least my experience has seen a lot of walleyes, white bass. Everything just seems to line up on those.
Oh yeah, and that's especially true in the spring. Most of the fish are spawning. They have spawning in mind, when spring rolls around. And so water temperature becomes, Jared and I would term hypercritical. Like this is and I'm talking 1 to 2, 3 degrees. That can make a difference. It is the difference. And, it's agricultural land, so you're naturally going to get a churn up of water when it's windy. And it's windy most of the time. Because of the waves crashing in, you're going to get that dirty water. Well, with the sun beating down on a dirtier water, it warms up incredibly fast. And that is one thing to really key in on is the water temperature for sure.
Yeah, especially in the spring. And those, you mentioned agricultural systems, and that is something about the Dakotas that is some fertile, productive water out there. Whether you're talking about raising ducks in the wetlands with all the invertebrates to just all the fisheries. It is really impressive, the productivity that those water bodies have.
Yeah. And I actually worked for the Game Fish and Parks Department in South Dakota when I graduated from college. So I was hanging out with it was in Pierre, which is the headquarters, and the fisheries department was out there, which naturally I was drawn to hanging out with those guys when I could. And super intelligent. They've always had an incredible program. I can think back, it was in the early 80s, and the variable is that the water was low. It was drier, and that was probably the one time in my lifetime where fishing was down, not necessarily where I grew up, but in that Northeast, up in that Prairie pothole region, it was, people were like concerned about their fishing, and the quality of fish, but that was one time and I'm 53 years old, so not only is that it naturally does a great job, those fish grow fast, but the support of their game fish department is just incredible. Like we talked about Devil's Lake, what they raise for fish, even though it's naturally reproduces fish, they raise an incredible number of fish.
Yeah. Jimmy Linder sent a little note out yesterday or whatever it was I think it was published in July of 2024 that North Dakota raised 12 million walleye fingerlings to stock in their bodies of water out there. Like, by comparison, I think Minnesota raises like 2 to 5 million. And so I think Minnesota manages about 4,200 lakes managed for fish.
Sure.
And North Dakota, I think, has just over 400. So, you
Yeah.
think of the scale of that, and
Right.
and obviously there's some differences in how they raise fish. But, I mean, to be able to produce that many fish and to stock fish of that size, they're just great opportunities in the Dakotas. And, Devil's Lake, obviously one of the more famous fisheries out there. That's a destination for a lot of people. But we really haven't talked river systems. We've got the James River system, Ashtabula, I've been on that one. And then, of course, the Missouri that we've both spent some time on. But the Missouri, particularly Oahe, man, has that been kicking out absolute magnum fish. So we were chatting yesterday a little bit about the history of that and what you had seen from smelt to now Cisco's in the fishery. And can you share with us a little bit how that really has developed in your lifetime?
Yeah. And that brings up a good point, why these are just the fertility of these lakes and how come they're so prolific and just sustained over the years. And one of the things in the eastern side of the lake is that you have the freshwater shrimp. And from the start of the time a fish hatches until its old age, it has something to eat. And now on the Missouri River system, when I was growing up, the big forage was smelt. And it was these massive schools of smelt, and it was just your classic, like it was electronic company's dream how these fish would show up and mark on these electronics. There'd be the hooks and these big balls of bait. You drop your lure down and you start whacking on, 4 to 7 pound walleyes real fast. It was a super fun fishery, but it was all hinged on smelt, and there was perch in there at the time. So fast forward, the waters got too high. They got too high in Fort Peck. They got too high in Skakawea. They got too high in Oahe, which runs from the dam in North Dakota down to the dam in South Dakota, in Pierce, South Dakota. It is a massive system, right? But what happens with these smelt is later in the year, they will move down towards the dam because that's where the deepest water is and it's the coldest water. So they were there and they had to get rid of the water. Like all these reservoirs were full and the smelt got flushed out of the system. It was incredible. So that next spring we went up, I was up with John Cooper and old friend Wicker Bill, and we were catching walleyes. I mean, you could not catch one. It was incredible, and they looked healthy. Like this is incredible. Wow, what a great bite! But in hindsight, as the year went on, the fish got skinnier and skinnier, and we knew what was happening. So they ran into several battles of the game. I mean, just think of managing fisheries that size is quite the task, right? And all these people that came to love Oahe were frustrated, kind of with. Well, then they ended up getting a ton of walleyes in it, so they had a huge, liberal limit on it.
Remember that?
Yeah, and now today's world, it's every year. We are not going to be surprised if the state record walleye is going to get caught, right?
It's unbelievable. Yeah, so many teens coming out of there. It's just insane.
Yeah, and it gets back to what Jerry was talking about, and this is all the kind of food related, whether it was the smelt. The interesting thing about the smelt was, too, that those walleyes, there were tons of 4 and 5 pounders. You couldn't hardly catch one that wasn't 4 or 5 pounds. I mean, in today's world, it was kind of like Lake Erie. This is what they are, right? And the biologist told me they actually aren't healthy. It's like a fish eating McDonald's every day. So they would get up to 8, 9 pounds, and then their life was over. They grow fast, but they were actually unhealthy. You'd clean them, and they were just, the fat would just roll out.
Oh man,
so, yeah. Getting back to the diet,
get them on a statin, huh?
Yeah, that would have helped.
Yeah,
that would have helped, Jared. But with what they're eating now, those fish are growing. They're huge. So
Yeah, and so I mean the Missouri River is, obviously through the Dakotas. Oahe seems to be getting a lot of press for its, size of fish, but Francis Case is a really popular destination early in the season. Just off I-90, a lot of folks are heading out that way, and it's amazing to me. We kind of steering this conversation into the ways you can fish out there. If you were to go out there right after ice out in the spring. That system has so many walleyes that you'll see guys throwing ringworms or swim baits on the riprap on the bank. You see guys vertical jigging a minnow from 6 to 30 feet. You see guys pulling lead line. You see guys three-way rigging. You see guys with pickerel rigs fishing from the shore. And it's just amazing. However you really want to fish, it seems like those bites exist in that system.
It is amazing. That part is truly amazing. You could say you could write the book, over there on the types of walleye tactics that we've written about over the years and talked about and discovered over the years. A lot of them absolutely work most times of the year. So it's pretty amazing. And the big focus and the big thing is walleyes. But you talk about diversity in that country. I mean, you can catch salmon, lake trout. Smallmouth bass that's across the country, right? But the smallmouth bass are out there and they're underutilized and they're big, right? 4, 5, 6 pounders. I mean, Bassmasters was out there, fished a tournament, and there's some big bass in those prairie lakes and on the Missouri River system.
The Missouri River, obviously the big river that gets all the attention out there. Ashtabula and the James River is cool, but how about the Red River of the North? I mean, you talk about a productive system, and the catfish fishery there is insane. How do you like that?
What a monster.
Oh man, yeah, I've been down south fishing, and they're into cats, obviously, and they're like, you ever fish the red?
Oh man, this thing was way bigger than I thought it was gonna be. Holy mackerel.
Like, it's unbelievable, right?
It is, yeah.
Yeah, it's good. It's super. I mean, this is world-class cat fishery.
Nice fish.
They're real ruffians.
That said, that the Missouri River's full of cats, the James River's full of cats, all those good river systems, and obviously the red, world-class cat fishing.
And it's not like you're going to a fishery like that and hoping to get a bite or two. I mean, these are it's like every one you catch is like a trophy channel cat. They're huge.
Yeah.
Just awesome. I love this. What a great fish.
And sometimes it's just, you can't put 4 lines in because it's too insane. You're just catching too many fish,
Yeah.
It is super fun. Yeah, if anybody has not experienced the Red River of the North, it's not hard. It's pretty simple. Go throw some cut suckers or frogs or whatever out on the bottom and some areas that look good, and you will more than likely run into some huge catfish.
Yeah.
Super simple fishing, tons of them in there, and really famous for the cats,
Yeah.
obviously.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to touch base on, which we have ignored because we just got done dealing with winter, but spring is in the air here. But the perch and the ice fishing, I mean, it's pretty remarkable what the Dakotas are known for. We were talking offline a while ago about there's a train that went to Devil's Lake to bring anglers to catch the perch, and the Dakotas are famous for the size and quantity of perch they kick out.
Yeah, it's historically known for just raising the true jumbo perch. You're talking, a 12-inch perch is a heck of a nice perch, right? But to have 13, 14, 15-inch perch mixed in, get out your ruler and put that down, and that's a perch. A 15-inch perch, 14-inch perch.
Those are big.
Big, and they continue to crank them out, and those fish grow fast. A 13, 14-inch perch, what's interesting part about that is, with bluegills, you catch a giant bluegill, you're like, oh, let it go, and you should let it go, right? I mean, that's what we do anyways. It's a real trophy, a world-class fish that'll help the fisheries to let that fish go. A big perch over in that country, 13, 14-incher, it's on its last legs, right? And so those can be harvested. Those, you don't have to feel bad about harvesting those bigger perch over there. And it happens every year. They'll get on these different bites on these prairie lakes, and they're world-class perch fishing through the ice over there. So from North Dakota. Devil's Lake is, like Jerem mentioned, they had the Perch Express,
Yeah.
Perch Patrol Express. That our buddy Zippy over there, he's still running that operation. Not that that they got set up differently. They got snow bears and all real heavy duty equipment, fancy equipment to get you to and from, at Woodland Resort there. But it's still catching all kinds of perch and the walleye fishing is amazing, but the perch is fabulous. And I would say I used to write the ice fishing guide, which was a real popular ice fishing magazine, kind of the only one of its kind at the time. And across the board, we have a good perching right here, right now in Minnesota, but across the board, perch are the number one sought after fish in wintertime.
Well, they're delicious, right? I mean, they're
Right.
just so good. We got into some perch this winter,
Yeah.
and it had been a while. I mean, Minnesota's been kind of in a lull
Mm-hmm.
and haven't made a trip to the Dakotas to target them. And you and Mike and Bill and everybody who was in on it, came back from their perch fry and were like, oh, man, I forgot how good they are because they are just outstanding.
They are outstanding. I harvest walleyes and I can eat a fillet and a half, maybe. Like, I cannot stop eating perch. I don't know how many I ate
Yeah.
from that recent trip. So yeah, delicious, obviously. And the guys on the Great Lakes as well, they know that they're having fabulous perch fishing. There's really a boom across the country for perch, and the Prairie, if it's booming across the country, the Prairie is booming as well. So.
Yeah. You know what we've seen here in Minnesota anyway is Mille Lacs. This was kind of the year of the perch out there, but Winnie, Leech, like our bigger casts, our bigger water bodies seem to be the ones that kick out perch, and they'll be good for a few years and they kind of go down, and it does seem cyclical. How do the Dakotas compare in terms of cycling through those bigger fish out there?
Yeah, good point, Jared. Throughout the years, it seems like lakes will boom up. So actually, if you do have like a drawdown in water and then it comes up, that it creates fertility, and these perch can get up there and spawn, and you'll have these different better year classes of perch. Now that, again, the fish grow fast over there, and one of the main reasons is freshwater shrimp. So most all these waters have these shrimp in them, and so say one lake takes off and it's getting heavy pressure and people are harvesting lots of perch, it actually give these other lakes a little break, because this one will get fished down and it's not as good fishing. And the reason it's not as good of fishing is because the perch population has dropped down to where there's so much food. Like I talked about going over there and wader fishing for walleyes. Well, one interesting thing, when you come out of the water, like, your waders can be just absolutely have another layer of shrimp. They'll attach themselves to you, and you throw them in the back of your truck, and it looks like a crawdad boil in the morning. I'm not kidding you. Like, you can't get them all off of you, So my point is, they have plenty to eat. So if that population goes down, they're actually hard to catch, because the lake itself is in decent shape to where they have abundant food. So it makes it harder for anglers to be successful. So then it gives that opportunity, that lake, to bounce back. Another one might take off, the pressure will move over there and they'll crop those down, So it kind of self-manages itself, for lack of a better term. Granted, like, ice fishing is hard on fish populations, because in South Dakota, like in Minnesota, for instance, when we're here on a normal winter year, Jer, like, the snow just keeps piling up.
Mm-hmm.
On the Prairie, it blows off the lake.
Yeah.
Okay, so anybody with two-wheel drive can go ice fishing. So if the good perch bite's happening, you'd be amazed at how many people are actually out there capitalizing on a good perch bite. But that's the way it's been, and that's the way it is, and that they seem to self-regulate, and bounce back. So
That's pretty cool that they're that productive and can kick out that many fish. They seem to get all the attention in the winter months. I mean, are there perch opportunities? I've never fished the prairies for perch in the summer.
yeah, surprisingly, like, no, like, there's the opportunity there. The most of the focus turns towards walleyes and other species. However, I will say in July through fall, that's really when a perch bite will set up. And yeah, they'll go out there and vertical jig for these fish in deeper water, bobber fish. It can be outstanding perch fishing, but it's usually mid-July, summer, and then it'll last through fall. So there's definitely an opportunity there. I wouldn't say that it gets tapped into like the walleyes do.
Yeah. Regardless, cool, really, really cool opportunity for perch out there. I mean, just a real multi-species mecca. And it's like perch, walleye, obviously the perch being more favored, it seems, in the winter months. But, those two get all the press. But again, there's huge channel catfish. There are Atlantic salmon, Chinook salmon, lake trout opportunities, muskie opportunities, white bass, crappies. I mean, really a whole host of different critters out there. And in fact, one of the other cool things is there was a time when they were stocking zander in North Dakota and Spiritwood, and there may have been some other lakes. And I know Troy Lindner had caught one out there. Al and I went out one time on a mission to try to get a zander, but they do really cool things in the Dakotas with different species of fish, just trying different things. And it's kind of cool, some of those opportunities that might pop up that seem
super cool. Yeah, I can't give those guys enough praise. We call it the DNR over here. That's the Game Fish and Parks, department. And yeah, they've always been on the forefront of stuff, and super cool to see. Exciting. Like, you can go catch a 50-inch muskie in South Dakota. Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yes. Yeah. And North Dakota too.
Yeah.
Like, I think, Al was out, Al and Ty, when they were out in Skakawea, they went to Autobahn, and they've been stocking that thing with, I forget what the deal is. It was tigers and, real muskies.
Right.
Both of them were in there, but that's a super cool deal. So,
Yep.
Obviously, New John's has kicked out big ones, and on and on. Again, lots of opportunities for multi-species in the Prairie region.
Absolutely. I mean, crappie, as you mentioned, white bass, the smallmouth bass, largemouth bass. You start flipping rocks over, like, you're going to be amazed at what this place has to offer for fish.
The one thing I'll say, the largemouth bass fishing I've done in that area, there are some great largemouth lakes, but for whatever reason, it doesn't seem like they're as common as you might think. I mean, you can run into some fisheries where you just look at it from the shoreline and go, wow, they're standing wood. I mean, it just looks like a largemouth bass paradise, and they're just not present in a lot of water bodies out there for whatever reason. But
right. No, when I was growing up, there was a couple lakes you could catch largemouth, and the smallmouth weren't that prevalent either at the time. Mm-hmm. But you get out on the western Prairie, where those are actually stock dams, or in the little reservoirs. There were giant bass out there, mostly on private ground. There were some public waters that, I'm not kidding you, it was 5 to 7 pound largemouth, which was pretty incredible.
Yeah.
Put in your little, your float tube or whatever you wanted,
Sure.
Hook into these big fish. So, yeah, opportunities are endless. Yeah, if you start sniffing around.
No doubt. So that's kind of a general overview of really what this area is. And we didn't even get into Canada, the lakes and the Duck Mountains. And I mean, you could really consider like Winnipeg and Manitoba as two more of those other, big prairie fisheries. And of course it stretches into Saskatchewan with Diefenbaker and Last Mountain and on and on and on. But let's circle back a little bit to, being more springtime right now, some of the better techniques that you might use in these prairie pothole situations to cover water and contact fish. Like, what are some of your go-to presentations?
Right. So obviously, like, it's the spring of the year. It's whether it's pre-spawn or post-spawn, they still remain shallow. In fact, those fish will stay shallow or move shallow, pretty much throughout the entire year. So the bites, I generally focus on the shallows for as long as I can. There's going to be good action, and when they're shallow, casting is my preferred option. I would think for most people would be too, because it's just a fun bite, So with that, like, okay, what are your options? Well, it's soft baits, whether it's a jerk minnow, but paddle tails are incredibly good. Those fish, like Jared mentioned earlier, move around. They have to move around because they have to find food, right? So they're always on the move, and a paddle tail, and they're willing to hunt down fish. So a paddle tail is just a dynamite bait. Whether you got a 3/4 ounce jig or a 1/4 ounce jig, depending on the situation. Throwing that bait up, and absolutely a straight retrieve can outfish somebody that's puppeteering the daylights out of their bait, right?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, and another one is a hair jig. They came on the scene. A hair jig's a real good option. Al and I were over there several years ago now, and we banged them up pretty good with hair jigs.
I remember that, and
yeah.
and there was you guys were using, it was really green water that you were fishing too, and
Yeah.
if I remember right, one of those black.
Oh yeah,
It was pretty hot in that
Yeah.
green water too.
right. Yeah, Al tied on a black one, and that was definitely good. And interesting about that, it was a hot day, and it was summer, right?
Mm-hmm.
We were catching those fish in 2 to 3 foot of water, and calm,
Yeah.
So, yeah, whatever we wrote about in the books, you might want to forget about that sometimes.
Sure, yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And just go fishing. And I will say one of my favorite baits, I've had the blessing to fish all over the country, and one of my favorite baits that has worked, from Lake Winnipeg to the Green Bay to South Dakota is a lipless crankbait. I call it a lipless crankbait or a rattle type bait, but it's basically the Rapala rip and wrap.
Yeah, I grabbed one of them because I knew we were going to be talking about it. But when I'm heading out there, it's a swim bait. I'll have something that I can do some snap jigging with, whether it's a hair jig or a thin minnow profile. But like, this is hands down my number one go-to bait when I head to the Dakotas.
Yeah.
It just works shallow, works deep. You can cast and wind, you can jig it. Like, there's really not a wrong way to fish it, and white bass like it, walleyes like it. You can catch a huge crappie on it. Like, anything that swims out there eats this bait. So it's just an amazing tool for contacting fish.
Yeah. And what's interesting about that design, the lipless crankbait, is it's been around for absolute decades. This particular bait design, however, is the way it's balanced, the way it fishes, like, hands down, is one of the best lipless crankbaits ever designed. And it's the way it fishes. Like, if you go over to Green Bay, you fish it like a jig. I mean, that's how you fish it. If you're used to hopping a jig back, you can fish this bait and you're going to be successful. And the reason I like it over on the Prairie Lakes is, again, these fish, you add up all these variables. Like, you're not targeting specific. If you're on the search for fish, they're on the search for food. This bait attacks everything that they use to find food, which is their lateral line, the vision. It's an active bait. You're fishing it fairly aggressively. Everything about this bait, when you get bit, like, it, right? It's a hammer.
Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah, and of course, with any style of fishing, whatever you're most comfortable with, that's what you should use. But I prefer fishing this with a bait caster.
Same.
So being able to throw baits in the wind in North and South Dakota can be super frustrating. And I would guess that's why probably a lot of people fish this bait on spinning gear, especially if you're fishing out there, because it's tough to bomb baits into the wind if you're not experienced with the bait caster. So this SV technology that Daiwa has, if people aren't familiar with it, really what the technology is, it's got a magnetic system that works with the inertia of the reel. So the most likely time you are to backlash is when you're making the spool is accelerating at the beginning of your cast. And so this spool, if you were to look at it, it's got this cup on the side that slides into these rings on the side plate, and those magnets control that inertia. So you're not going to have that big burst of speed that's going to make the spool overrun and you backlash. So if you haven't seen this technology, it's pretty cool because you can be an inexperienced bait cast user and go chuck baits like this or shallow running crankbaits or whatever into the wind without fail.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's an incredible technology, and it's a plug really to all the walleye anglers out there. Like, this reel, well, it was for years. Well, maybe we'll make fun of the bass fishermen first. Like they didn't use spinning rods forever,
Sure.
and it's fairly recent that they caught on to the finesse fishing with the spinning rod. Well, walleye guys, on the contrary, haven't used bait casters for casting. My opinion, I'm with Jer. I'll use it on the spinning rod as well, but I absolutely prefer to use a bait caster. I'm more in tune and in control of the lure. It's important to stay in really direct contact with that bait. It can make a big difference. You can just cast it out and reel it in, right? And it'll catch fish. But if you become the puppeteer of this bait, you will start catching more fish. And if you're with another good angler, I mean, Jared and I get back and forth fishing together, and someone will pick up on something, I'll pick up on something, and pretty soon it's like these little nuances. That's all it is, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And so when you match that, you're just more in control of that bait, because you can use a high-speed reel. You can pick up lines. So when you get into the rhythm of working this bait, and you match it with the right rod that works in combination with the bait, it becomes super deadly.
It is, yeah. So there's a system that people tend to prefer. For me, like fishing a lipless crankbait, I like fishing with fiberglass rods. So I'm fishing a 7.2 medium moderate, and I like fishing it with fluorocarbon line. So when you look at a system like that, if you're used to fishing a extra fast action rod with braided line, like this feels super weird. It's like this. It just feels non-responsive, spongy. But once you get in tune with that, if the fish bite it, there's all this stretch in the system, and you've got little hooks and for a relatively heavy bait. And that system is designed to hold on to those fish. I mean, once you get a hook in them, like they can't escape the stretch in the line, the flex in the rod. You see what I'm saying? And so, to me, it's just so efficient to pick up line with the bait caster. That rod just drives those hooks home, and you just don't lose that many fish with it. And back to the fluorocarbon, I know a lot of crankbait anglers fish 10. I prefer fishing 12 out there, but these baits aren't cheap, right? And we were talking yesterday about, some things that you can do to hold on to baits and getting confidence in what you're putting ahead of this bait on your system.
Yeah. Yeah, and that gets over to the confidence. One of the things I like is I do like using braid, and I like to use a brighter line. So when a fish strikes, like a chartreuse type line, you can see that bite. There's certain times you're not in contact with the bait at certain moments, and you can see the line jump. But what do you do at the end of the line? So Jared mentioned he likes to use fluorocarbon, which, boy, if you are from Minnesota and grew up fishing Clearwater lakes, like I would be in love with fluorocarbon as well. It's anytime you have line but shy fish, that's you gotta pay attention to that all the time. Well, in these bodies of water, like I said, they're pretty fertile and they have some color to them, and basically, you could tie directly to a bright colored line. I know you said that you started doing that fishing over there, just taking out the fluorocarbon and tying direct because it doesn't make a difference.
Yeah.
And one other thing you can do, because these baits are expensive, is add a tieable wire leader to that bait. There are tons of pike over there, and you will definitely lose baits because of pikes. You won't even feel, they just eat you out of house and home, So you add a wire leader. It is not going to deter walleye strikes based on the way that you're fishing in these waters. These fish are up there. They're looking for something to eat. They're not analyzing, the bait. So definitely learn how to tie an inline wire. You can tie it right to the super line, or have them pre-tied. That wire leader these days, if you're talking 10, 12, 15 pound wire, it's thin. It's actually thinner than fluorocarbon.
It's crazy. Yeah.
And I talked to some saltwater guys years ago, and they were like, yeah, no, you guys were ahead of the curve on this. They started using wire instead of fluorocarbon, and they figured out it's just thinner. right?
It is, yeah, yeah. I mean, I love that. Well, when we go to the far north pike fishing, we've always got that tieable stuff tied on for pike, and we catch lake trout in gin clear waters when we just decide to switch up on the same outfit. But for me, like that 20 pound and 30 pound, if people haven't seen this stuff, it's just called tieable titanium. You could get it on Amazon or whatever. It's a little bit expensive, but the cool thing about titanium is you could wrap this stuff around your finger. It can be in a fish's mouth, and it's not like wire where it has memory. It just returns to the same spot. So,
Yeah.
But to your point, if you fish clear water your whole life and somebody suggests you put a wire leader on to go fish for walleyes, that seems absurd. If you tell somebody who's going out to jig on the Missouri River that you should tie your bright green or bright yellow line directly to your jig, that seems completely absurd. But if you try it, if it's not working, obviously switch it up. But most of the time it works. And so like tying direct braid to a jig on the Missouri, there's lots of wood down there.
Yeah.
You get snagged on a piece of wood, you put your thumb on the spool, pull straight at it, the hook slightly bends out, you get your jig back, you bend it back in, and you're fishing. You're just saving tons of time on that. And the same thing with this. You're not losing $10 every time a 2-pound jack decides he likes eating perch colored rip wraps.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's definitely. I would promote using a wire leader. I mean, obviously that would be the main thing that we'd rewrite the articles over in that country, is to really use those. You're gonna, that's a lot of tackle to be leaving in the bottom of the lake as well, or in the fish's mouth. So we can, it isn't gonna deter the bite. And if it does, then switch. Start this way, then switch. I can think of, there was below Wahi Dam, for instance, and there's certain clear water lakes, but that was one real, it's just gin clear. You can see the walleyes down there and whitetails. So that, they were definitely line shy. We went to a lighter line, or you just use fluorocarbon and you definitely start catching more fish. So there are times when, and you notice that with ice fishing too, right, Jer? Mm-hmm. Yeah, where they can show line shyness, but for the most part,
Yeah.
Yeah. Rig up, jerk them in.
Right, exactly. Yeah. You're going to, I mean, you can get into some like serious fish processing out there. One of my favorite things, I know some people poo-poo it from South Dakota, but I like white bass. I said it. I really love going out there and catching those things. I just think they're crazy. They go nuts. It's oftentimes really visual where you get to see them chase and stuff, and they can be big out there. I mean, gosh, guys and devils get 3-4 pounders, right? And bigger at times. And when you get on them, it's just like bam, 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 one after the other. And that's just a situation where it's so much nicer to have, to your point, a little bit heavier setup, heavier line, or just running a heavier fluorocarbon or wire leader where you can just start lifting fish in. And sometimes it's like that with walleyes or smallmouth too. Like you can get into some serious action in that part of the world. And the fish just don't seem to be, maybe to your point earlier, grow fast, die young, lack of pressure, just the sheer abundance of fish. But it is kind of nice going to those places where you don't have to just be so fine-tuned and you're running 6-pound here and you're running 30-foot fluorocarbon leaders, and everything just has to be such a finesse deal. Can be some just old school, simple, cast and wind. You don't have to have a really refined approach in a lot of these situations because it's just get lure in front of fish and catch.
Yep.
Yep. But that said, a couple other presentations I want to hit on before we leave that area is jerk baits, and then back to that snap jigging deal with both hair and plastics. We covered on the paddle tail a little bit too. Is there a time when you would prefer running plastics to hair jigs?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, there's most of the bodies of water, you don't think weeds, but weeds will grow in those bodies of water, and ripping a soft plastic through the weeds it's just deadly. And it has soft plastics have a little bigger profile, so when you work in the weeds and they get hung up and you drip them, that's what the fish are. They're keen on that movement and positioning to strike those baits. So it just does it. It's a great bait. If I were to use a hair jig, it'd be a little more open than that. We're hopping that thing back over a sandy spot or a shoreline break. yeah, great. Hair's awesome too. That's super fun to fish.
Sure.
Yeah, but another cool thing about the Prairie Lakes is the opportunity for shore anglers. And when I was growing up, we would actually every night go out, put our waders on, that we use for duck hunting. I mean, they were just as much wader fishing. And there's guys to this day that boot fishing is awesome. Like you wade out, just to your chest and cast all night, and those fish move in the morning and at dusk, and they're coming in waves and they're feeding, and you catch fish every night for until it dies off, sometime in late June, and starts back up again in the fall. So it's a rare opportunity for people without boats to actually be more successful than people with boats, for most of the year.
Oh, yeah, I believe that. You see, it's really popular, too. It's just not a couple people doing it. It's really popular.
Yeah, it's like sometimes you're better off, fishing from shore. And it's that again, with all this high water, you'd have to see it to believe it, or just look at the map where I can think of a lake called Bitter Lake, where that has it's massive and expansive. Well, when these lakes filled up, roads went underwater. Okay, so literally like sections. These are framed off in 1 mile sections, like they're all underwater. People who own that land, it's underwater. So it's amazing, that part of it. But where the roads exist now, there's riprap along all those roads. Where the roads used to be, those are hard bottom edges now with ditches. But this is now fish structure, and so you can go find these spots and wade out and fish along those culvert areas or along the riprap, and catch your limit. So
yeah, it's really cool.
It's amazing. Yeah.
Before we get too far down the line, I want to talk about something that you've also got coming new here, and that's you're about to rig up your new boat. Why don't we hit on what you're getting this year?
I'm excited about my boat this year. Yep.
Yeah.
In the Pro V, and one of the things that we're putting on the front is the Dorado latch system, which is amazing. And what coincidentally was developed in South Dakota, and that's where it kind of first became popular. My dad's had one for decades, and that thing is amazing. Once you get it set up on your boat, if you fish alone, it's awesome. But even with somebody that's really not that experienced at loading and unloading boats, it's just a huge stress relief to have that, to drive up on the trailer. The thing grabs your boat, and you're off and rolling, right? So
it's unbelievable. Yeah, people who aren't familiar, it's this automatic boat latch system. Like these jaws clip the eye of your boat, and you just drive up, and they're spring loaded. The eye hits this trigger, and the jaws clamp in, and you're set. And when you want to leave, you pull the trigger off. And now we both run roller trailers, and of course the boat latch works on bunks too, but for a roller system, man, you just cannot beat it. So anybody who's used rollers before know it's like, if you're at a steep angle, you're starting the motor, putting it in gear, applying a little pressure so you can, undo the latch in the front, and then you got to run to the back. But this is just, it's amazing.
I'd say it's amazing is the right description.
Yeah, and it's cool that it's made right there in South Dakota. Yeah, that's
it's a great idea, and it's once you get it set up, all kinds of boats will work. You go out to their website, which is the Dorado, DROTTO products.com, and there's a list of all their boats. They have you can reach out to them, super great people, customer service, and they'll let you know if it'll work on your boat or not. I have a river boat, and I fish on the Mississippi a lot, almost every weekend, and that's dealing with current. It works for that boat. I throttle that thing up in the current, ram it against the thing, and it just latches every time. It's super awesome.
It is great. Yeah. Well, that is fantastic. Is there anything else that you want to cover down on Jeff? Otherwise, I think we're about ready to wrap it up, but we've got a little gift for you in the back there too that you kind of set up with your big lake trout. So.
Well, those frescoes are pretty sweet. That particular shot is with the cell phone.
Yeah. And that's a huge picture. So there, people who don't know fresco, it's these refreshable photo tiles. So it's a magnetic board. You get the board, you order the pictures, you can switch out your art anytime you want. So Everybody who's on the Angling Buzz this year is going to have themselves a nice little fresco. That's going to be a beauty.
Thank you. My wife will love it. No, that's cool. I mean, I just think the Prairie, you think Prairie Lakes, think North and South Dakota, but that Prairie Lakes, I'd say go look at the map, look at an aerial map, and look at how much water is there and adventure is there. We're telling you, it's incredible. It's to say it's a hidden secret. Like if it's a hidden secret, I don't know where you've been. People go out there that it can get busy, but it's a lot of fun. It's a great place to fish. You'll have to get used to the wind, but you put up with the wind. I'm more than willing to do that if we can get out there and jerk some fish.
Good. Yeah, right, exactly. No, it is an amazing opportunity. Appreciate you doing this, Jeff. I think we're going to wrap this thing up. If you're watching this on television, you can look at the long version of this episode on anglingedge.com. Also check out our YouTube channel or AnglingBuzz. And we've got the extended version here where this conversation goes on and on. So we appreciate everybody watching, and we will see you next time.